Welcome to another recording from Self-Tech. This is one of 3 sessions that Ron Deal spends with us. Ron is a trained marriage and family therapist and has spent over 30 years writing and speaking on this topic. He has written a number of books focusing on giving blended families the tools they need for success. During this session, he will be sharing the importance of humility in our marital relationships. So we welcome Ron Deal. Ron Deal, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, Wib, it's easy to do. You're a good friend, so glad to be here.
You know, I was thinking the other day, Ron, I think we put out many a campfire together.
Yes, we did. We go back to the young youth ministry days of our lives and working with kids and camps and a lot of good memories there.
That kind of intergenerational camp that we did, that was unique.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the feathers in my cap. We did a good job with that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Ron, the people who will be listening to that may have already been introduced to the 4 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Self-Tech is an app that is really trying to help them use their 4 steps to integrate their new thought process and to help regulate their emotions as well. So the 4-step concept may be very familiar with most of our listeners, but not for all. Mm. So why don't you first tell us a little bit about your work with couples and especially how you use the 4 steps as you work with them.
So I've been doing marriage and family therapy for 27 years, and the last, 15 years or so, been very familiar with the 4 steps and using it both in outpatient work with couples and families and also in marriage intensives, like you and others that you work with, working with couples in small groups. I've been working with couples primarily, 1 couple at a time, for 4 days, and we get an awful lot done. We get an awful lot done from start to finish, but it's a process of trying to help people come to understand where they are and where they want to go. And the 4 steps is just such a great way to help people understand what's going on inside them and also what's going on between they and somebody else that they care for. So essentially those 4 steps are starting by saying what is going on with you. What am I feeling right now? What are those primary fears or pain? As I always tell people, think fear or pain. What's the pain I'm feeling right now? Number 2 is, what am I doing with it? How am I coping with that? Am I getting angry? Yeah. Am I getting defensive? Am I withdrawing? There's a whole host of things we do there. Right. The 3rd step is then moving towards change. And it's, well, what's the truth about this situation? What's the truth about me? What's the truth about us? Whatever is relevant to the problem at hand. And then based on that truth, step 4, how am I going to act differently than I have in the past? So 1 and 2 is about what is, 3 and 4 is about what we want to create.
Yeah, that's good. You know, when you and I were talking about doing this interview with each other, I was really pleased that you brought up the idea of humility in this whole process, because I have noticed that over and over again, lack of it, without humility, the relationship, especially marriages and the conflict that they're having, just never really seems to heal. It never goes anywhere. Yeah. So as you think about humility and especially how it empowers the 4 steps here, Ron, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, let's start with what humility is not. It is not thinking poorly about yourself. I think there is that misnomer out there for some people. They don't really understand the concept of humility. They think it's somebody who sits around kind of says, woe is me, or I'm not good at anything, or I'm not valuable. And it's definitely not that. If anything, it's the opposite. It's recognizing your value and your worth, but then putting that under charge, being in self-control of that and what you do with your value and your worth, and letting the best of that come out of you. Somebody said it's thinking rightly about yourself. So it's a perspective that says, I have value, but I'm not more valuable than anybody else. I don't have the right to stand over and judge. I don't have the right to look down upon other people, to to be critical or thinking negatively about them, putting them down so I can feel better about me. It's none of that. It's really having a right perspective about who I am. And then, like I said, bringing the best of that out of me and offering that to you. At the end of the day, humility results in us thinking less about our own needs and more about the needs of others. There's an element of sacrifice
Mhm.
that comes out of us when we're humble, but we do that sacrifice out of self-respect and, again, understanding our own worth.
Yeah, when we talk about self-loathing, and that's almost like what you were
Mm,
talking about at the very first, and not feeling very good about yourself, not having a high opinion of yourself.
mhm.
We understand that that can just be a time of depression, um, but also a time of blaming.
Yeah.
And so when you are beating everybody else up because you're not feeling very good about yourself, it's very hard to be humble because, like you
Mhm.
said, that humility is dependent upon you valuing yourself, seeing
Yeah.
yourself from a really clear, honest, and a lot more positive perspective than what you would have.
Somebody said once, there's 4 levels of love. Let me see if I can pull them out of thin air here.
Okay.
Level 1 is not, I wouldn't even call it love at all. It's loving me for my sake. Okay. This is narcissism. This is, I'm looking out for me and only me. And the world revolves around me. So barely could we even call that love. Quite a jump up. Level 2 is loving you for my sake. Okay, actually, it's not quite a jump up. It's a little jump up. That's where I'm using somebody for what I can get out of them, right? So really, that's about me too. The third level of love is quite a leap up, and that's where I'm loving you for your sake.
Hmm.
And now I'm really looking out for you, and I'm not looking out for me. I'm really considerate and trying to figure out what I can do to love, serve, please you. But here's a fourth level of love that I think is the greatest form of love, and that's loving me for your sake. Now, ponder that for just a minute. I think when humility is working well, I know who I am and I love me, not in a self-serving sort of a way or selfish sort of way, but in a self-respectful way. I'm a person of worth. And now I take that and I give it away. I use that for your sake. That is a powerful form of love. I don't need you to love me to make me feel good about me. It's kind
Right.
of already there. I'm just now able to offer that, extend that in relationship to you. And I don't walk around looking for people to affirm me or get me to be, to feel what I want to feel. I already have that. There's already gas in the tank.
Right.
That empowers me, empowers the engine, if we could say it that way, to then go somewhere and giving myself away to others, loving me for your sake. Now that's a perspective that I think really empowers us well to do relationships.
The idea of emotional self-regulation, being able to control myself,
Hmm.
almost becomes a non-issue whenever somebody might do something that in the past I would have felt unloved. But
Mm,
whenever I know that I am loved,
right.
I am significant, there is just this deep sigh of wonder
Yeah.
what's going on inside of them
Yeah.
that would cause them to behave this way. And you can't get there without, like you said, this understanding your self worth. That's what allows you to become humble in any situation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I find that especially in problem solving, Ron,
Hmm.
where you have a couple that are trying to solve a problem and they have one way to look at it, and they are very
Hmm.
tenacious on holding on to their answer is the right answer.
Yeah.
So then it becomes almost impossible for them to come to a win-win.
Hmm.
Is humility involved in that process as well?
It is absolutely because, okay, humility kind of readies my heart to grow, to to learn new things about me, to learn new things about how to do life.
Mm,
When I'm stuck in a frame of reference that says this is the only way you can do it, it's actually pride
yeah.
because it says I know what should happen. And because of that, I'm going to stick to this. Now, here's the interesting thing I think about pride. Pride blinds us. Okay. It blinds me to me. Let me tell you my journey with this. All right. Four, five little snapshots out of my life and marriage with my wife, Nan. Year one, every new couple has to learn how to sleep in the same bed together, right? And you roll over and sometimes you elbow the person. You're really sorry for that. Well, my wife is a cocooner. I mean, she can take covers and turn it into a cocoon, which of course leaves me without anything. And the first year that we were married, all I thought of night after night after night, waking up cold, is my wife is selfish. I just had this thing, my goodness, she just takes all the covers and I'm freezing over here. And so I would kind of grab the covers in the middle of the night and rip them, over on my side and act like nothing happened, just to kind of let her know you can't do that to somebody. That's not right. Snapshot number two. By the way, number one, what did I learn about Ron? Nothing. What did I learn about Nan? She's selfish.
She's selfish.
Snapshot number two. It's year 5 of our marriage. I'm in graduate school. I'm studying marriage and family therapy, which of course meant I knew everything. And I had to help my wife with all of this. And so she is a school teacher. I remember one day she came home from school. She'd had a difficult parent situation. The principal came down, like, she's going on with this story. And I stop her right in the middle of it and I start giving her advice.
And they always appreciate that, don't they, Ron?
Yes. It's like, I'm saying to her, look, if you try this new communication skill I just learned the other day, you'll find that parent thing goes a whole lot better next time. And I tell you what, she looked at me like, just with disdain in her eyes. And what did Ron learn about Ron? Not much. What did Ron learn about Nan? She's ungrateful.
Yeah, she doesn't take good sound advice. Yes.
She doesn't. By the way, I could tell you another story about the time during the middle of an argument, she actually went and got the checkbook and wrote me a check and threw it at me. It said, "Here, counselor." I picked it up. By the way, in hindsight, I totally deserved every bit of that. In hindsight, then I also picked up the check and looked at it and said, "Oh, I'm worth a whole lot more than that." Okay, snapshot.
Lots of deposits in that account.
That's right. Snapshot number 3. It's year 10. We're driving in the car one day. She's in the driver's seat. I'm in the passenger seat. She's going to drop me off at work and go on her way. I start giving her advice about driving this time of day. This way's faster. Don't go that way. Hey, get over on this lane. What are you doing? And all of a sudden I see this anxiety on her and I'm like, oh no, what's going on? And she's looking at me like, you're driving the car. Like, would you back up? What are you doing? And for the first time with year 10, what did Ron learn about Ron? I like to give advice. I like to be in charge. I kind of had that thought for the very first time. Okay. Pride blinds us to ourselves.
Yes.
Year 20. We're driving home from Thanksgiving with a family. My family has all gathered and I'm driving and she's in the passenger seat. And I start saying, did you see my mom giving my sister advice about how to play cards? Like, who cares? It was just a game. We're just trying to have fun. No. Did you notice that one thing when my brother was telling a story, but then my other brother started correcting him on this? Like, what is up with that? But that is crazy. Have you ever noticed that before? And I turned and looked at my wife sitting beside me and she gives me one of these looks and says, I have been telling you this for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Really? Okay, stop. The family therapist who knows everything, pride blinds you to yourself. Yeah. I couldn't see my need for control, and nor could I see my family history of we like to give advice. We really pride ourselves on being correct and right and proper, and we help each other out with all of that all the time. And I totally didn't know that was a part of who I was. And now I start looking back at these different seasons, snapshots of my life and our marriage going, oh, that's me. I do this to her. I drive her. And what is the message behind all of that? Ron's right, Nan's wrong. Does that create emotional safety in a relationship? Does that empower my wife to go, I'm going to venture out into the world to share an idea and let's see how it flies? No, she's like afraid of Ron. Like, that's not right. Humility says, I look in the mirror first. I look at who I am in any given situation, especially when something's going wrong. This isn't feeling right. It's always natural to look at the other person first. But humility says my first course of action is to look in the mirror and deal with me.
Yeah.
Now, if we'll adopt that attitude, all of a sudden the 4 steps become very available to you, and they operationalize change. Now I have tools I can use because humility is allowing me to do that. But if I'm standing in pride, I could talk the 4 steps all day long. I'll never use them. I won't do it when the chips are down. I'll talk about it when we're nice and calm and comfortable with each other, but I won't actually use it in the moment because pride won't let me.
Yeah, I'm thinking of just when you take the 4 steps, when you do the 4 steps, you have to be very mindful of what's going on in you,
Yeah.
and take ownership of that, and realize that what you're about ready to do and how that's going to hurt. And is that really going to help the relationship? That takes a lot of humility to do that.
It does, especially in those moments where you feel a little justified.
Oh, yeah.
The other person's done something and you're like, okay, bring it. Now I get to do my thing
Right.
because you did again, that's sort of a pride moment.
I stayed in my truth. I did what I was supposed to do over and over, and you still didn't change.
Mhm.
So I am justified now to act however I want to.
Yeah.
Again, it's that same humility that
At
is.
the bottom, at the end of the day, humility keeps us teachable. It keeps us
Yeah.
open, looking in the mirror, willing to grow. And then we are able to use the tools like the 4 steps that we learn along the way.
Ron, you talk about something called a humility shift.
Hmm.
Explain to me a little bit more about what all that encompasses and how that plays into what we're talking about today.
Well, I think there's 2 parts to it. The first part we've already begun to introduce, and that's I got to deal with me, and I got to pause, and I got to slow down, and I got to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Where's my heart? Am I open to learning something about myself in this moment? My wife just said something that implied that maybe I'm doing something wrong. And so is there any truth to that? Like, I've got to make that humility shift within me. But what I think is super powerful about the humility shift is the interpersonal nature of it. Because once I do that, just pause for a second. Let's back up. It's year 20. And I've kind of had this presence about me for 20 years, and my wife has learned Ron just likes to be right. Ron's got an opinion. He's going to push that through. All of a sudden that shifts, and I move away from, I'm right, you're wrong, to, wow, you know what? I got to look at that part of me for a second. And I start talking that out loud, which is what the 4 steps does. And all of a sudden, there's not just a shift in me, there's a shift in us. It's sort of like we've danced the same dance. We've done the waltz for 20 years, and all of a sudden Ron starts doing the tango. Like, doing the waltz for Nan no longer makes sense.
Right.
And guess what? Now it is subtly, softly invites her to figure out how to tango. And now we're both doing a different dance, and it has a totally different outcome for our usness. It's an amazing process, but it takes the discipline of me dealing with me, and then it begins to ripple into our us.
Yeah, you change one part, everything changes.
Yeah, right.
You also talked about humility and how important it is to develop, and one of the first things to develop is that vertical relationship.
Mm.
And I'm assuming you're talking about your relationship with God in this respect.
I am. I'm a believer, and it's very important to me. It's a very big part of my life, and I find it empowers me to make this humility shift and walk out the 4 steps horizontally, not just with my wife, but anybody, my kids, life, coworkers. But it really comes back to that perspective. When you stand before the Almighty and say, you know what, I know who I am and I know who I'm not. I know who you are. And because of that perspective, then I don't think too highly of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm back to, but I also know that I'm loved and that I'm valued and there's inherent worth in me because of my relationship with God. Um, all of a sudden, that sets that straight and reminds me of what's good and right and proper and what's moral. And then that empowers me to bring it right back into my earthly relationships.
I often tell people as they are walking out their 4 steps, and somebody will say, well, I'm doing this, but they're not changing.
Mm.
Why do I keep doing it? And my answer often is because it's the right thing.
Mm.
I mean, is that who you are? And of course, especially if they have a strong faith, that would be kind of like a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't always come that easy for most people.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a lot of struggles, I think, for couples and families and relationships are, what is truth? What is ultimate truth?
Right.
We can have a lot of arguments about little truths, little t's, but capital T's are the things that really orient us to where north is on the compass. If you have a compass that doesn't know where north is, you're kind of in trouble. So, yeah, that's a constant for me.
And to realize that constant, and then while somebody might do something that caused you to go 3 degrees or 15 degrees another direction, you know where north is, and that's where you need to stay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ron, again, I want to thank you for joining with us as we talked about humility. It's always great to spend time with you.
Thanks for having me.
I've been impressed with what you've done with your career. And I look forward to our next discussion regarding stepfamilies. So those people who are listening to this and they have stepfamily issues, they will want to clue into this next video that we do. So Ron, thanks again.
Thank you.
Folks, you will be overwhelmed when you see the resources Ron has developed and compiled for stepfamilies. So let me encourage you to visit his website at successfulstepfamilies.com. There you will find links to resources ranging from podcasts and workshops and books and much more. So Ron has recorded 2 other sessions with us. The first dealing with hurdles stepfamilies must jump, and the other looking at the 4 steps and how they can help blended families in their pursuit for health. So thank you for listening to another session from Self Tech. A better self, a better world. Self Tech.